Their role in history was nearly forgotten, but in 2010, 300 Women Air Force Service Pilots, known as WASPs during World War II, stood proudly as they received Congressional Gold Medals in Washington, D.C. Among them, an Arvada woman, Lucile Wise. It was the 1940s, and the nation was at war. With male pilots in demand for combat missions, women pilots jumped into the cockpit for domestic missions.
Our primary goal was to ferry aircraft from the factories to the air bases and to embarkation points.
Lucile Wise joined the WASPs in 1942, but she'd begun flying just for fun a year earlier.
My first lesson was on December 6, 1941, just one day before the Pearl Harbor attack.
With the war effort on and her love of flying, she wanted to do her part, so she volunteered for the Women Air Force Service Pilots.
I started out on Piper Cub, and I flew Taylor crafts, just this very small, light aircraft. And then we started with the military aircraft, the primary trainer, which was much faster and much more powerful than our little Cubs. It was an open cockpit primary trainer, and then we went on to the basic trainer, the Vultee BT-13, and then to the advanced AT-6 and the twin-engine Cessna. During training, we lived in barracks just like the male cadets did, and we were under military discipline. And it was hard work. We flew sometimes 6 or 7 days a week, and they were long hours, and it was a lot of stress because we were so worried about passing our check rides.
About a third of both male and female pilots washed out.
And so those of us who were left were really proud of those wings because we worked hard for them.
After 6 months of training and logging 200 hours, Lucile was assigned to a Kansas City base where she flew for the Weather Service.
When I started, we had a twin-engine Cessna. It was about a 5-passenger Cessna. It was kind of slow, but it was a nice, safe plane. And we had short hops between these air bases, so it was okay. But then we got a C-45, the Beechcraft C-45, which carries about 10 passengers, and that was much more fun to fly. Primarily, I flew the inspector, but we had a 7-state region, and we were supposed to inspect the weather stations. There were a lot of air bases in those 7 states, and so we were traveling most of the time.
Denver's Lowry Field was a frequent stop.
My passengers were all men, and they seemed very comfortable with me. I had no problem. I was in the WASP for about 19 months. I logged 700 hours, never scratched a plane.
But she almost fell out of one once.
Well, it was in primary training. You know, they were open cockpit planes, and the only thing that held you in was this belt across your lap with a buckle. And I was set up to do solo spins, and I got up to my altitude and cleared the area, and I was just ready to kick it into my stall and spin when I looked down and my belt was unfastened. It had come unbuckled somehow. So I would have been thrown out of the plane.
Lucile and the other WASPs flew nearly 6 million miles of non-combat missions during World War II, serving with a passion.
I just love flying. It's such a wonderful feeling, you know, to be up in the air. It's exhilarating, you know, everything looks so beautiful. And then you've got the challenge of, you know, of making the plane do what you want it to do.
But for Lucile and many other WASPs, the end of the war grounded their skybound careers.
The WASP were disbanded in December of 1944 because at that time our legislation had not passed to militarize us, and there was no longer a shortage of pilots. The men were coming back from Europe, and we were disbanded. It was pretty much of a shock. We just didn't know what to do with ourselves. We had been doing something that was just wonderful, and it was very hard to get our lives started again. I missed it dreadfully for a while, but it was expensive, and going back to the small planes wasn't nearly as much fun. We were spoiled. And then I got, you know, I married and raised a family, so I got involved in other things. I missed it very much, but I finally got over it. I still love to be around airplanes.
In 1977, the WASPs finally gained veteran status, and in 2010, their service was recognized with Congressional Gold Medals and many words of gratitude for their service.